to any of us. He's getting it all wrong. He told us he was going to get it wrong in his campaigning. So what he's trying to do right now is threaten a governor who's running for re-election, who's made it very clear she's not going to allow taxes to be raised. So he's going to find other ways to do it. There are many, many ways to, suck money out of New Yorkers that have no options, nowhere to go. And the people who get hurt the most are the middle class that don't have options, that can't flee.
A city council member in Hillsdale, Michigan is being threatened with a $25,000 defamation lawsuit just for doing his job.
It was toward the end of a long meeting that city council members considered the appointment of Eric Moore to the library board. Council member Joshua Palladino referenced an email he had obtained where Moore was ambiguous about having a standard for the library that refused any books that might be inappropriate for young people. Palladino, reading from the email,
he said that we should not create a system to determine what books were age appropriate for children due to the threat of lawsuit.
Eric Moore apparently took that as a personal attack, and Thomas More Law Center president, Chief Counsel Richard Thompson, tells AFN he sent Palladino a demand letter.
If he did not retract his statement and publicly apologize, he would be sued for $25,000.
Palladino asked Thomas More to represent him, and Thompson says the defamation charge is going nowhere.
The unanimous Supreme Court held that local legislators are entitled to absolute immunity for their legislative activities.
Thompson says it's a Supreme Court precedent that makes sense.
If legislators were always afraid of being sued because something they said during the legislative session, it would chill their ability to honestly respond on behalf of the people.
Moore has not responded to Thompson's opinion that his defamation suit is a non-starter. I'm Steve Jordahl.
For American Family News, I'm Steve P.
Over the last 10 years, young people have been deconstructing their faith, or more accurately, de-Christianizing. The First Great Awakening was a supernatural move of God that happened in the American colonies just before the American Revolution. How we need another Great Awakening today. Please help spread the sparks of revival by supporting AFA with a gift, and we'll send you a free copy of the DVD, Desperate for More, The First Great Awakening. Go to afa.net/revival today.
And I will make mere lads their princes, and capricious children will rule over them. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. It's a sad day in America when the top law enforcement officer in a county is so constitutionally illiterate he doesn't know how many branches of government there are, nor the branch in which he operates. But that's exactly what happened in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. Gary McFadden is the Mecklenburg County Sheriff. When asked if he knew how many branches of government there are, he replied, no. When asked which branch of government he served under as the county sheriff, he was likewise unable to provide the correct answer. Constitutional illiteracy is a national plague.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview. The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. Today is Thursday, February 19th, and a big trial is going on in Los Angeles that you really should be paying attention to. This is a landmark social media trial that is contemplating the question of whether the features of social media on Meta, which includes Facebook and Instagram, features such as infinite scrolling, beauty filters, push notifications, and algorithms are engineered to maximize engagement in young users, contributing to addiction, depression, suicidal thoughts, and other harms. And you and I may think, well, of course, that seems like an obvious issue for social media. If anyone has been on social media, and especially young people on social media, this seems to be a very clear indication that, of course, the algorithms are designed to keep you on those platforms. But Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, testified in person facing the jury on this issue, and he strongly denied that Meta intentionally targets children or engineers its platforms to be addictive, and stressed that the company prohibits users under 13 and that many who are underage lie about their age to join. So basically, hey, we're putting all of these parameters in place. We can't necessarily help if somebody who is not meant for these platforms comes on, but we're not intentionally targeting them. And so this is a really fascinating civil lawsuit. And initially, YouTube and there was one other platform that was engaged as well, and they ended up. So it was TikTok and Snapchat as well. They settled with the plaintiff before the trial began, and so Meta and YouTube remain as defendants. So you had two platforms that settled out of court before the trial began. We don't know what exactly was contained in that settlement. That's not been made public. I'm not sure if it will. And then Meta and YouTube remain as the defendants in this trial. So it's going to be really interesting to see what unfolds. And so many people are talking about this going to it being a bellwether sort of trial, because like what's going on in the realm of the intentional harm for the transgender surgeries and the genital mutilation and all of that, and seeing where some of those juries are going, if this ends up with liability on Meta and YouTube, then that's going to be a kind of cascading effect for some of these other trials. And so what's interesting here is this question of whether these features are designed to be addictive and essentially ignore the harm that can and that does foreseeably happen. And so this particular case was brought by a 20-year-old woman who is just identified by her initials, who says that she began using Instagram and YouTube as a child, and that the platforms worsened her mental health. And that, that seems like a pretty bare, basic claim. And the question here is how young people begin and children begin using these platforms, and whether the foreseeable harm that can happen to children ultimately these platforms are responsible for. Because, obviously some of these things that even if they're addictive to adult users, we have the wherewithal and we have the choice to simply turn them off. And for children, it's a little bit different, at least under the legal question. And so Adam Mosseri, who is the head of Instagram, also testified earlier in the trial, saying social media use isn't, quote, clinically addictive, but rather can be problematic use. And so the internal company emails and presentations that are being shown in court are suggesting that Meta employees once discussed strategies on engaging teens and tweens, so kind of that age range of 11 to 13 maybe, and that age verification was difficult and not always enforced. And so this case matters because it's a test on whether social media platforms can be held liable under a kind of product liability style claim for harms like addiction and mental injury, not just for harmful content posted by users. So this is separate and distinct from, like we were talking yesterday, for example, to Steve Deace about whether YouTube is a publisher or whether it is a platform, and how YouTube is trying purposefully to engage in viewpoint discrimination, not be viewpoint neutral, and just say, hey, we're a platform, and obviously there are some legal boundaries that you have to observe at the outer edges. But in terms of viewpoint neutrality from just a platform, if you're a conservative or if you're a liberal or whatever your political view or whatever type of content you want to post, we don't actively discriminate and censor you based on your political affiliation, your religion, all of these other things. So this isn't a question of whether Meta and YouTube are publishers versus platforms. This is a question under a product liability framing, and the legal question of whether not whether this is harmful content posted by users. This is about the algorithm and the behind the scenes overall structure of how Meta and YouTube operate, that they intentionally design these platforms to not just be engaging to users, but actually addictive and ultimately harmful in a way that not only is a foreseeable result, but may even be, an intentional one. And obviously, Meta would say, well, we're not intentionally trying to be harmful. We just want to keep people on our platforms using our products, and that's sort of this, this standard. Of course, anyone who has a product, they want to keep people engaged. I was looking even at an advertisement because, of course, Instagram, and I'm a prolific user of Instagram, and a lot of these platforms for political content, especially. But these algorithms also know like your purchase history, some of this, so they target ads. And it was funny scrolling down yesterday and seeing this ad, and one of my friends and I were talking about it, that it was this, ridiculous, like almost pirate looking outfit from a company. And it was, oh, you're going to wear this forever. And we were just laughing because it's like, okay, we wouldn't even wear this once except maybe to like a pirate themed party or something. I mean, I don't know where in the world you would actually wear this ridiculously, hideously looking outfit in like normal society. But the advertisement's language saying, oh, you'll wear this forever. If that were true and they actually believed that, then they would be undermining their own profit margin, because they would say these pieces are so classic that, you're going to wear them out and you're going to have them for 20 years and you're never going to need to come back and shop with us. And so, it is manipulative in a sense, and that's obvious, and we all know that marketing works like that. But it's so funny because it's like there are some things that are legally acceptable in terms of marketing and just persuasion, because that's not, for example, a provably false thing that, oh, you'll wear this forever. Well, that's not provably false, right? So that falls under the legally accepted, standards for marketing. But we all know that it's designed to be manipulative, right? And we all should know that as consumers. And we all should be teaching our children to be more discerning about some of these things. But where this case, I think, gets really interesting is under the kind of product liability style claim for harms like addiction and mental injury. It's not just about keeping your customers on the platform, and it's not just about harmful content posted by users. A verdict against Meta could set a major legal precedent for how social media companies are regulated, and it may force changes in how platforms are designed and operated, and how that would ultimately overall affect social media, and especially for children, remains to be seen. And so the legal stakes are, this case is trying to kind of move beyond just content liability. It argues design liability. So if the design itself is defective, then, Section 230, which, we've heard prolifically in conservative circles, may not actually shield them from liability. And so a lot of these platforms have gone to Section 230 to say, hey, we are platforms, not publishers. We're not responsible for content. And if people spend 17 hours a day scrolling, well, that's on them. That's their decision. But this is basically a design liability. And so this is the difference, for example, in a car manufacturer, right? When if you speed beyond the speed limit and you're going 105 miles an hour and you get into an accident, that's a user feature. That is something that the user pushed the product beyond what it was designed for, and obviously beyond what the law allows for a user. And that's not liability on the manufacturer. But if the design fails, the manufacturing fails, and the brakes don't work when they stop, and there's a design error, then that can at times create liability for the manufacturer. But it gets worse if a manufacturer actually knows of a design flaw, but they don't want to go back and correct it because it's going to cost them either a lot in redesign and recall, or whatever their analysis is. And for something like Meta and YouTube, if it comes out, and it looks like to me, in what I have seen, and I haven't watched extensively the entire trial, but just based on reports and the testimony, if what is being alleged, the jury ends up finding and fact finding and saying, yes, Meta and YouTube intentionally designed their algorithms and their product. They intentionally designed their product in order to create this platform that causes these addictions and harms, through mental health and all of this. Then that is the same type of liability as a car manufacturer, for example, that intentionally designs a car that is known to crash and says, well, because we will, for whatever reason, we'll make more money, the user will spend more time in it, or whatever their rationale for doing that. It's not a one-to-one comparison, obviously, there. But if they knowingly are designing a car that has these features that cause harm, that is a huge, huge liability risk. And so if Meta loses this, there will be a massive litigation wave, a redesign of platforms, possible federal regulation, and new duty of care standards required for tech companies, which frankly, I hope that this is the outcome, because this is something where conservatives, like I said, have fought against Section 230 liability shields for these platforms that are basically getting away with not only viewpoint discrimination against content users and content creators, but they're basically saying we have no liability whatsoever and we keep our algorithms a secret. And so while, regulation has to be done carefully, there already is federal regulation in a lot of these things. Like, you can't post certain content that would violate the law, right? Things like child porn, for example. I mean, just obvious things. And so to ensure that some of these regulations and restrictions meet a certain threshold and a new duty of care standard for tech companies, that actually really makes sense. And a redesign of platforms that doesn't intentionally engage children, especially, and minors through a lot of these filters and some of these other things that really do cause harm would be a very good thing for these platforms. And if they, lose money over it, well, that's unfortunately part of the protections that are part of a legitimate government. Because the government should, under a standard of a biblical worldview, and saying, what is the government designed to do? Well, it's designed to preserve and protect the rights of the individual, and sometimes that means regulation. And so this isn't, and this is where I disagree overall with those on the right who say that government is a necessary evil and the most limited government is the best government. Yes, government should be limited, but government does have necessary functions. And some of these things, like regulation, are actually necessary, and regulation has to be done in a legitimate fashion. And over-regulation, or if it's not trustworthy regulation, like what we're seeing with, some of the FDA, it's like, okay, we trust as a consumer that if this is FDA, if it passes the FDA, then it's safe to consume. But we're learning now in Florida that there are levels of arsenic in candies, and some of this other stuff that, okay, it passed the FDA, but is that regulation actually accomplishing what the regulation is intended for? So this is going to be a really big trial, and if Meta wins, it will reinforce limits on holding platforms liable under the law, and it will signal that courts are reluctant to treat social media as a defective product. So this is going to be really fascinating. We're going to follow this trial more extensively. We need to take a break here. I'm already a couple of minutes over just because I love talking about some of this stuff. But we will take a break here, and we need to see whether this jury, and it's really fascinating that this is in the hands of a jury as a fact finder. It's not a bench trial where a judge will determine questions of law and fact, but that juries are going to look at this and really ask, at what point does design become manipulation, and that manipulation cause foreseeable harms and consequences to users in a way that government absolutely should regulate. So it'll be interesting to see, and we'll know within probably, couple days or couple weeks. I'm not sure exactly how long this trial is supposed to take, but once we get that verdict, we will talk about this more. So we'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled, and it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives, and MediShare is proven. You can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted, it works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
The following is a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt, and it stressed me out. But what I thought was a solution turned out to be a problem. I kept hearing ads about debt settlement that seemed too good to be true. And actually, it was. When I called, they told me to stop paying my bills. That didn't sound right to me at all, so I hung up. Later, I found out that debt settlement is bad, real bad. Then I learned that there is a right way to pay off your credit cards. It's called a debt management program from the great team at Trinity. Trinity had a plan. In the end, I paid off my bills, I saved thousands, and I even improved my credit score.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Heather. Please forget debt settlement and remember Trinity Debt Management.
1-800-788-1813.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. A shocking number of doctors, nurses, and others in the medical profession are posting online messages threatening to injure conservatives. And in many cases, they're hoping conservatives suffer violent injuries. A labor and delivery nurse at Baptist Health Boca Raton in Florida posted a video hoping Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt suffers medical complications during childbirth. In New York City, a pair of detectives were manhandled and denied treatment at NYC Langone Hospital in the Cobble Hill section of Brooklyn. The medical team thought the detectives worked for ICE. The hospital apologized, but former Mayor Eric Adams said it was a total moral collapse, and apologies are simply not good enough. Those working in hospitals swear an oath to care for their patients. Clearly, that oath has been violated. And now we have to wonder just how many patients were either denied treatment or given inadequate treatment simply because of their conservative political beliefs. I'm Todd Starnes.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. Well, in other news that can be filed under stupid things that Democrats want to push because we have nothing else going on in this country that needs attention of the Senate besides the pride flag, right? Chuck Schumer, infamous stupid Democrat, is pushing a bill to give the pride flag the same status as the United States and military flags. So the legislation comes after the Trump administration removed the pride flag from the Stonewall National Monument. So this would not replace the American flag, let's put this into context as ridiculous as this is. It doesn't mean that the pride flag becomes equivalent to or replaces the U.S. flag as the national flag. That's unique in law and tradition under the U.S. flag code, and its symbolic and legal place is distinct. However, what this is pushing for is to have the pride flag that as the same status as other flags that get similar federal protection. So, for example, rules about where it can be displayed and safeguards against arbitrary removal on federal property. So, you'll recall that Trump took down a lot of these pride flags at U.S. embassies, and now the flag that was being removed from the Stonewall National Monument. And so supporters of this are arguing then the pride flag would get federal protection for arbitrary removal on certain displays, which is just utterly ridiculous. But let's welcome in our good friend Alex McFarland, who is an author and Christian apologist and the co-host of Exploring the Word right here on American Family Radio Network, to rant with me about this ridiculous piece of legislation. So, Alex, first and foremost, I think we need to clarify here that the pride flag itself, while obviously there are other symbols and other flags. We have a Christian flag, for example. There are other flags that have that represent certain groups. What the pride flag has sort of become is almost in use, almost like a national flag. We've seen several of the Olympians in other contexts and other competitions, instead of having the American flag, they're waving the pride flag. And, we've seen these ally flag buttons and stuff on people's lapels, which traditionally are supposed to symbolize what country you're from. And yet they put, or maybe in certain contexts, like here in Florida in the Epcot Showcase of the World, some of the flags indicate what languages the ambassadors speak. And that doesn't apply whatsoever to the pride flag. And yet, here are the Democrats suggesting that the pride flag deserves federal protection. Your thoughts?
Well, Jenna, thanks for having me. Good morning to you and good morning to everyone. And, the pride flag is evil. I'm going to say this, the rainbow pride flag connotes so many things that are wrong, that are immoral, and Chuck Schumer's wanting to grant this the same, equal legal status to the U.S. flag is treason. And another subject we could, roll out is why the Democrat Party in recent years has become treasonous, and they are betraying the United States of America. The U.S. flag represents so much that is good and godly, and I've often said that there are many scars and stripes that purchase the stars and stripes. But I've got to tell you, and I'm not saying this just as a Christian. I am a Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. But Christianity aside for just a moment, every American citizen that has served our country or family members have served many families over the years throughout the wars, family members have died. If you have one thimbleful of patriotism and appreciation for the USA in your soul, dear friends, then you should purpose in your mind right this minute that till your dying day you would never vote Democrat again. Because the idea to put the rainbow pride, immoral, heinously, unspeakably vile, globalist, wicked pride flag, to put that on the same plane as the U.S. flag, that is treason. And if you have one shred of appreciation for this country, you should say, that's it. It's game over. Never again would I vote for anything with a letter D beside of it.
Oh, amen to that. And this should show you so clearly what the agenda of Democrats are, because, like I said in the opening, if we didn't have, other issues that are obviously more important that the Senate needs to focus on. I mean, this is coming in, this very same time frame that the Senate is dragging its feet on passing the SAVE Act, which of course would safeguard election integrity and ensure that you have to just show an ID in order to vote in federal elections. I mean, things that have actual consequences for Americans. And now, intentionally, the left is trying to blur the distinction between national unity symbols and things that are intentionally demonic and divisive, and they are activist symbols. And this is trying to redefine the whole LGBTQ mafia and elevating a cause-based flag to the same status as the American flag. And I just find that so reprehensible.
It is reprehensible. It's wicked. Let me remind people that last fall, the government shutdown and the Democrats stonewalled, and we'll come back to the use of that word, but they wanted the government shut down. People were without their paychecks. It really was jeopardizing the stability of the country. But the Democrat demands to end the shutdown. And the president had a budget. It was time to open the government and operate the government. Okay, these were the extortionate demands, the ultimatums. The Democrats said, look, we want $3.9 million to go to LGBTQ advocacy in the Balkan Islands, right? $2 million to organize feminism in Africa. $2.9 million for desert locust reduction in Africa. $13.4 million for, quote, civic engagement in Zimbabwe, and $24.6 million for climate resilience research in Honduras. I mean, these were among the insane, absolutely ludicrous demands of the Democrats to end the government shutdown last fall. And Jenna, the reason I bring this up is, I mean, how does this have anything to do with the welfare and the care of the U.S. American taxpaying citizens?
It doesn't at all. Yeah.
No, not at all. And this pride flag, and I want to talk a little bit about the fake history that's been contrived around the Stonewall. Trump took down a pride flag that was at this Stonewall National Monument, and the whole thing, I was in college in the 80s when the gay movements were coming along. And I remember at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, more and more in all of my classes, there was talk about homosexuality and gay marriage, gay rights. Never in any of my college classes, and, I went to a very, very liberal undergrad, program, Jenna, nothing was mentioned about Stonewall. And by the way, what happened, I don't know if people realize this, but the 1969 Stonewall riots, the Stonewall Inn was a mafia-run gay bar. That's a fact. And there is this narrative that began to be crafted in the early 1990s, that there was this heroic act, a first brick that was thrown by a single individual. And even secular scholars say that this is false, this stuff never happened. But what you have to understand, people, is that this idea that there's this heroic, noble cause for gay marriage, mainstreaming of homosexuality, and now transgenderism, this is a human right, and this is a grand moment of history. It's false. And our nation, I was on a show yesterday, Jenna, with Brad Dacus of Pacific Justice Institute, just a brilliant attorney. And we were talking about how America is predicated on natural law. And that's also another word for really essentially the Ten Commandments. Now, here's the thing. In the privacy of one's home, you can be as deviant as you want to be. But what is happening is, in legitimizing a worldview with no moral guardrails whatsoever. And that's the LGBTQ, trans, pro-choice, be as deviant as you want to be, to forcibly impose deviancy and militant relativism on the nation. Our Constitution can't survive in a context like that. And the fake history contrived around the Stonewall riots, as if that's the same as the shot heard around the world at Lexington, or the civil. I mean, it's a horrid slap in the face to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement of the 60s, which was absolutely legitimate. But that's this fake history, fake narrative, fake just cause that's been crafted around the gay movement. And to put the pride flag as any sort of nationally recognized symbol, it's treason, and may God grant that it goes nowhere. I don't think it will, but Chuck Schumer, it's pandering. Jenna, forgive my rant. I'll hand it back to you. This will probably go nowhere, but Schumer and the empty, vacuous symbol gesture Democrats are doing this to simply say, come election time, okay, sexual deviants, we tried. The evil Republicans opposed us, but please vote Democrat because we did try for you. It's just an empty gesture.
No, 100%. It's an empty gesture. Thankfully, I think you're right, Alex, that this won't go anywhere. But the gesture itself isn't meaningless in terms of what you said, and you explained it so brilliantly, in terms of legitimacy of government. I mean, when people come back at Christians and say, well, what somebody does sexually in the privacy of their own home? I mean, how is that hurting you really? Well, when the government puts a moral designation on conduct and has as permissible and appropriate, and they say that this isn't something that's prohibited, that then inherently legitimizes that conduct, because we all know that the civil government carries an air of legitimacy. And this is why we can go back and look at other forms of government and other world powers, and we can say, okay, that may have been legal in their society and under their law, but it's certainly not lawful in terms of being moral and ethical and upright and righteous. And that's the difference between legal and lawful. Lawful means that it has to be in accordance with a higher moral authority. I mean, something can be legal, but certainly not lawful. And this is where the inherent legitimacy of government then begins to blur that, when the legal designation extends and people then think, oh, okay, well then it must be moral because it's permissible in this society. And we can think of, some obvious examples, like how certain societies treat women, how they treat minors, how our society treats unborn children, things that are legal right now, but certainly not moral. And so to even suggest from a, very high-ranking Democrat senator that to put the pride flag on the level of the United States flag, that is literally the symbol of a country that was built on a foundation of a Judeo-Christian ethic and recognizes the law of nature and of nature's God and reality, and puts the pride flag that is literally the symbol of everything against the laws of nature and of nature's God, is intentionally trying to excise God from America and say we are putting a false worldview on the same plane as the Christian worldview, and suggesting that this symbolizes truth instead of the American flag. And we've got to take a break here, Alex McFarland, but you're staying with us through the break, and I really appreciate that. So we can talk more about this, and also I know that you are at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention today, so I want to hear more about that and some of the important things that organization is doing, along with AFA, to continue to protect our right to talk about these things on air and to publicly use our airwaves to say that we object to things like the pride flag, and this has no place in a legitimate government. So Alex McFarland, my special guest this morning. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis in the Morning.
Exploring Missions with Pastors Bert and Nathan Harper.
When I became a Christian believer, I felt that God was calling me to go to North India as a witness.
We focus on the most vulnerable in the Metro Atlanta area.
Operation Care International is started in Dallas, and now we have partnered with 52 countries.
Exploring Missions explores missions. Find it on the podcast page at afr.net.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
And I will make mere lads their princes, and capricious children will rule over them. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. It's a sad day in America when the top law enforcement officer in a county is so constitutionally illiterate he doesn't know how many branches of government there are, nor the branch in which he operates. But that's exactly what happened in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. Gary McFadden is the Mecklenburg County Sheriff. When asked if he knew how many branches of government there are, he replied, no. When asked which branch of government he served under as the county sheriff, he was likewise unable to provide the correct answer. Constitutional illiteracy is a national plague.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
How about this? Some actual good news on the healthcare front, even as costs just keep skyrocketing. So if you're 65 or older, MediShare now offers MediShare 65 Plus. Call them. You can talk to them about this. A lot of people are taking advantage of this now because even if you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are out-of-pocket things, deductibles and copays that just keep going up. And the whole point is to help you by giving you a low, consistent monthly payment that fills in the gaps. In fact, I can tell you how much MediShare 65 Plus is. For example, it's $99 a month up to age 75. It keeps costs under control. That helps with peace of mind. MediShare is trusted too. It's been around for 30 years, and it's a community of people who help each other. Business owners, retirees, pastors, teachers. People love being part of it. Here's the number you can call now. They are easy to talk to. Call 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE. 833-45-BIBLE.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back, and I'm still here with my guest this morning, special guest Alex McFarland, who is a host of Exploring the Word right here on American Family Radio Network, author and apologist. And during the break, I was scrolling through social media, which my algorithms obviously are targeting me here because this came from Polymarket just in. The odds of Jesus Christ returning this year have surpassed Kamala Harris's chances of winning the next election. Alex, I just started laughing during the break because, well, for one, Christians should always be ready because we know that will, in fact, happen in a literal occurrence in history, that when the day and the appointed time comes, then Christ will return, but we don't know the day or the hour. And so, and so many people have obviously speculated and they try to project, different things. Obviously, we can see the signs of the times, but all of that to say, Kamala Harris's chances are basically nil. And just the way that was described, I just had to laugh. But
Amen. That's pretty funny.
Right. But speaking of the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, you are there in Nashville, and this is an important week that that a lot of Christian broadcasters, including us at AFA, set aside to not only engage with some of the other broadcasters that are there, but really to be part of a coalition that recognizes that, in particular, religious broadcasting is very important to the overall public square and participation in the conversation for the purpose of advancing truth. So what are you experiencing there at NRB this year? And just share with us a little bit of your perspective.
Wow. Well, it's very encouraging, Jenna. And we are in Nashville at NRB, is National Religious Broadcasters. And I've been coming for quite a number of years with the American Family Radio Network. And AFR, by the way, is one of the, major participants here. AFR has a really big booth. There's a convention floor. And all the ministries that you've ever heard of, like Samaritan's Purse, Compassion International, the Billy Graham Ministry, those types of ministries are here. And it's really a gathering of Christian communicators from around the world. And it's very exciting, Jenna. I've seen it grow and grow and grow. I'm sure there's 5,500 to 6,000 people here. Last night we had a dinner, and Shannon Bream from Fox News, who actually was in school with at Liberty University, but she gave a speech last night, and so many people, my goodness, Kevin Sorbo, the actor, and Kathy Ireland, she's a fashion designer, and we'll be interviewing her later today. Anne Graham Lotz, the daughter of Billy Graham, who's a great speaker, Erwin Lutzer, Eric Metaxas. He's not here this year, but he's usually here. But my point is, and I would ask people to pray, NRB is a growing movement. And Troy Miller, the president, gave an address yesterday, Jenna, and it was my great privilege a year ago, profound honor. I was put on the board of trustees of NRB, which I'm deeply honored to serve in that role. But Troy Miller, the president, just gave a list of examples where the airwaves would be restricted. The bottom line is this: the Democrat-led left wants to censor the broadcasting of the gospel, and whether it's keeping social media free and open and not subject to viewpoint discrimination, or whether it's, like if I'm an ordained minister, if I go on the radio and I say, look, according to the holy word of God, the Bible, God loves you, Christ died for you, but according to the Bible, homosexuality is a sin. Well, NRB advocates that I don't go to jail for preaching that. That I can, as a minister of the gospel, I can actually be on the radio, preach the whole counsel of God, and not face legal reprisal. So NRB is very important. But there's one other thing, and I would ask people to pray about this. And this is going to sound a little strange. There is the car radio inclusion bill that NRB is fighting for. For a couple of years, automakers have been pressured by the tech overlords, and the Democrats are on board with this, to not put radios in automobiles anymore. Now you say, what does this matter? Well, listen to this. I was on a Zoom call with the Billy Graham Ministry about a month ago. The most recent data shows that 93% of Americans of all ages listen to some radio during the week, AM radio, FM radio. And one of the reasons the left does not like cars to have radios is because AM and FM radio, in addition to music and news and local news, AM and FM radio have been, the landscape of talk radio, which is overwhelmingly conservative, heartland America. Now, here's the thing. If there's just a tablet only in a car, then they have to sell you. You have to pay for subscriptions to, whatever platforms. And there's strict control on what you can and will hear in your car. See, free speech, the free expression of ideas, the free exchange of uncensored information, AM and FM radio is a big part of that. So a big thing that we're praying for, and the NRB lobbyist in Washington, we want, as we've had for a century, we want radios in cars so the free, unfettered exchange of ideas, including the gospel, may continue.
Amen to that. And, at every opportunity that we can to push for more liberty to voice the truth and to not have these regulations and restrictions that would suppress the truth and would not provide those opportunities like AM radio. I mean, that's so important, and we do need to continue to advocate for that. I was saying earlier this week, Alex, that this is one of the great things that I love about AFR and also about our listeners and supporters, because we don't have to rely on anyone else for our signal. We are basically uncancelable, as Tim Wildman always says.
Amen.
Because
Amen.
we own our towers, we own the land that it's on, and even if some platforms on the podcast version of the show later, decides to censor us, we can fight those battles, and we do, and we have. But in terms of just the actual broadcast and the live terrestrial radio, we are uncancelable, and that is a huge thing that other religious broadcasters don't have that same freedom. And obviously, we want to make sure that we are championing them as well, because it is in the multitude. I mean, the more voices that can speak truth, the better. And that's why I always love amplifying people who I think listeners should also listen to and support, because the more people preaching the truth of Christ, the better. But we also need to make sure that we aren't censored by the government in kind of some different ways. Maybe it's not that they're pulling the plug on our radio network, but
Right.
It's that they could enforce some consequences for viewpoint discrimination or censorship, for example. So all of these things are incredibly important. This is why the NRB as a coalition exists. My good friend and first legal mentor, Mike Ferris, is now their general counsel and is doing just such a great job in litigation and all of this. And, where do you think, Alex, that religious broadcasting is headed, not just in terms of, kind of this whole question of First Amendment protections and, some of this, but in terms of fielding kind of the new landscape of multimedia, because I think it's important, and one of the reasons I've started a TikTok channel, and people can go follow me there at Real Jenna Ellis, like X, and Instagram Reels, and some of these response videos are to kind of go where young people are and then try to draw them back into to listening to our programs and getting more Christian commentary.
Jenna, thanks for talking about this. Let me just say, the idea that AM and FM radio would be canceled, that sounds unthinkable, but really that is what many on the left want to do. The left, they want to control what you're allowed to hear. And let me just give you some examples here. I know time is short, but there are over 41,000 zip codes in America. It's pretty amazing. Now, in those zip codes, there are over 15,000 local radio stations, and there are about 1,100 local TV stations. And one of the wonderful things about America, there's local news. And many in the tech world, the big tech, Meta and YouTube, they want to really cancel out local news, because if they federalize or globalize the flow of information, you're not going to hear so many things. And of course, part of broadcasting, and that's what we do with the American Family Radio Network, is, in addition to news and current events through the lens of truth, we broadcast the gospel. But I mean, I think about how, what a loss it would be. The colorful local news, the local sports, local weather. And if AM and FM radios are eliminated, I know many have them in their kitchen or in their home, but the NRB, one of the big things, and President Troy Miller, we talk about this, we're trying to keep AM, FM radios in automobiles because, yes, 93% of Americans of all ages in a given week listen to at least 7 to 20 minutes of car radio. And it's very much more than that. And so this is important because we are a nation predicated on, well, among other things, the free exchange of ideas, free speech. And in a world without radio, that would be severely, severely restricted.
Yeah, and it's incredible to think that, that kind of censorship might happen, but I think that we need to all remember the lessons that we learned from the COVID era and how quickly
oh my goodness.
And arbitrarily some of our freedoms really can just disappear overnight under the auspices of legitimacy, and they're obviously not. But this is why eternal vigilance matters, and why protecting our freedoms is a constant, and we can't just always be in protective mode. We also have to ensure that we are moving forward and we're advancing liberty as well. And so we're already out of time, Alex McFarland, but I so appreciate that you are with us this morning, and give my best to everyone at NRB. And I just so appreciate being able to talk about these things. And just once again, to our American Family Radio listeners, and especially those who choose to donate to us, it keeps us on the air, and it allows us to do what is just a wonderful form of ministry. And I love being part of this network. I love being part of AFA, and your donations help support us. And we couldn't do this and be uncancelable without you. So thank you so much for your support, and also for your prayers. I always love reading emails from all of our listeners, and hear from you every day. So as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not